We'll see where this goes. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Yelling at Concrete podcast. So, I'm on a search for new music. No, that's a lie. I'm not on a search for new music. I am on a search for new music which sounds like the old music I like. Because there's a steady realization that I'm getting old. I'm not that old. I mean, some of you are looking at me thinking, yes, I look like a 60-year-old man who's been crammed into young person's clothing. But, shockingly, I'm 27. Which isn't that old at all. But I've noticed little increments of behaviour, which I've noticed in older people, such as not being able to find new music I enjoy. Because a lot of the music I enjoy is no longer made. Which is shocking, because it's fantastic. No, I appreciate that everyone has different genres. And it's very important, the music you come into interaction... words. The music you interact with when you are much younger has more of a significant impact. Most people will listen to music when they're about 12 to 16. And whatever you were listening to when you were about 12 to 16 is probably what you are listening to most often now. So if you were really into pop music at that time, you're probably listening to pop music now. If you were really into metal at that time, you're probably listening to metal now. And that's because that's when it makes the most lasting impression. You're trying to figure yourself out, you're trying to figure out the world, and then suddenly, you've got something to latch onto. I mean, a lot of people don't get into music. I've recently met a guy who is not musically interested at all, which seems quite strange. And so for a lot of people, it's quite strange, but for other people, I think, no, it's just music. You can take it or leave it, which is fine. But back to the point, as we're always getting off point. I grew up in the 90s and 2000s. Now, I'm not one of these people who class myself as a 90s kid, because during the 90s, I was only 10 maximum, because I was born in 89. So it kind of looks weird when I think people are like, oh yeah, I'm a 90s kid. It's like, well, you were a 90s kid, but likelihood is you were an early 2000s kid. And metalcore, skip the point, spoilers. No, what I was trying to say was the music which I enjoyed most at that time was nu metal. And nu metal, for those who don't know, was associations with being a grebo and a goth and being into metal music, and it rose up through the late 90s and early 2000s. And essentially it was metal, but it was mixed with stuff like funk, grunge, and rap. And so that was the music I was listening to when I was 12 and onwards. So, and I mean, obviously I progressed from there, found other genres, and I mean, most days today now I listen to a lot of underground rap, which sounds really pretentious, but at the same time it kind of is. Either way, so looking at this genre, I thought, well, it kind of died out. And I found the reason it died out. It died out because there was a lull period where it was kind of oversaturated because it had gotten so popular. And thus, the bands diversified, separated themselves. Some got heavier, some got lighter. We can look at the likes of Linkin Park, who got a lot lighter. And then you can look at the likes of Sum 41, who got a lot heavier comparative to what they were. But then Sum 41 were a nu metal, and they were just, yeah. Either way, back to the point. So I've been searching desperately to find bands which sound like the old bands I like, because I really can't get into new music. I've tried. I've looked at metalcore and thought I should probably be interested in that, right? Most people look at me, they think, that guy's probably into metal. Either that, or he's into living in a tree and harnessing his own hummus. But apart from that, it's this weird little push. It was it's a weird divide in kind of in lives, really. I've met a lot of people recently, and music has been one of the main points of discussion. And I know a lot of people who really love nu metal and are kind of ostracized for it, because it's associated with bands like Limp Bizkit. And Limp Bizkit has a reputation, and I quite enjoy Limp Bizkit. And a lot of people really hide it, and I can't hide it at all, because you get in my car and it's Best of Kerrang 2003. So there's no way for me to hide it. But as music progressed and metalcore bands came around, like Killswitch, not Killswitch, what's the word? What is the word? Taking Back Sunday and all that kind of stuff. And they really kind of pushed forward with that line. And yeah, I mean, Killswitch kind of kicked it off. As I Lay Dying, Bullet for My Valentine. And it was about there, I really remember, it was about there is where I dropped it. Because I just couldn't get it. I think Trivium were probably, they were one of the bands which they came in and everyone seemed to really enjoy them, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll get into this, and then I just couldn't. So I went a diverging direction at that time and got really into black metal, which again, if you don't know, is a much heavier, slower version of metal. And it's this kind of behaviour where I realised that it's really easy to understand how parents don't enjoy their children's music. And I've understood that for a while, that this would eventually happen, but now that I'm recognising it, it's disturbing. It's so disturbing. It's a realisation of how we're wired in such a way. And what confuses me more is that I'm generally accepting of all music. There's very little music which I won't give a chance. I mean, I'll give it a chance, and there's usually one or two tracks in between which I can find and go, yeah, that's a really good song, and I'll listen to that song, and it'll be fantastic. But I'm just struggling to find things in a genre which I thought I knew, and that's kind of scary. So I've been heavily searching to find music which sounds like old music, and it is possible. But it takes a lot of time. I remember a few years back, because I used to be, what's the word? I don't know. There's no word there. I've completely lost the plot on that subject. So I used to listen to a lot of Black Sabbath, who, for me, are one of the best classic metal bands, Black Sabbath. I'd put them over Motorhead, just to put that out there. But I'd put them above Motorhead. And that kind of music, and it was all kind of thematic and melodic mixed with heavy. And I discovered a band called Cadaver about 2-3 years back, and suddenly, they were a new band at the time, or new to me, and they'd only just had an album come out, and suddenly it tapped into that little tweak in my head, which this sounds like your old stuff, you should listen to this, and I did, and it was fantastic. And it's so great to have that payoff of searching for music and finding something which you can kind of relate to and go, yeah, these guys know. They got together and they understood that was what needed to be done. I think nu metal needs a revival. I'm just putting that out there now. And if it occurs in the next year or so, I'm taking full credit. That they need to bring back that combination of angst and anger and everything which is associated with it. It's such a mash, especially in this generation. There's so much now which is sampled and remixed and thrown together, and that industrial kind of pre-metalcore sound would fit perfectly. Can you imagine that? That's a fantastic thing to kind of have resurge again. Especially, I think of the political climate. Back when we were kids, and nu metal came out, it was a volatile reaction. For us, it was punk. I'm not old enough to have lived through punk, which only lasted a few years, not even that kind of thing. It was such a blast. And nu metal came through and did exactly the same for us. We were kids, and then things were kicking off globally, and then suddenly we had this balance of not being appreciated and being blamed as an entire generation because the internet was rising up. At the same time, conversely, as we got even older, the Iraq War came about, and we had these villains in power. And it's just a repeat. And I remember talking to my dad about it a long time ago, that this generational repeat happens time and again. They blame a generation, that generation gets older, and then something occurs, much like a war, and that generation feels completely ignored because the other generation is now being blamed. So they're left to deal with the mess, and then it moves into the next one, and that's the cycle of youth to eld. You kind of go through these transitions, and music travels with you. And I think nu metal could really do well in this climate. Can you imagine? I mean, there was a Fuck Bush album. I don't know who remembers this, but I distinctly remember there was a CD album which was just called something along the lines of Fuck Bush, and they made such a villain out of him. And it was this volatile reaction to the Iraq War, and everyone kind of got on board with it and said, you know what, yeah, we will make an entire album. It was full of like a lot of. This was around the time when nu metal was getting a bit saturated, but it was around the time of American Idiot and Green Day, before they did their classic "We're Gonna Dress the Same" for one album and then get paid for it. And yeah, can you imagine a Fuck Trump album? That'd be fantastic. Fuck May. Apologies for all the swearing. I know this isn't a thing I do regularly on this show. I don't try to swear. I find nu metal interesting as well. That the kind of people who actually enjoy nu metal. I think I've spoken to quite a few, and I obviously have friends who grew up with me at that time. And you look at them and you think, really, you were into nu metal? And it did. It really bridged gaps between subcultures within society. There was a whole mess of just anybody picking it up, because it did. I don't know how it did it, but it tapped into something where everyone kind of sat there and went, you know what? Yeah, that's something which it's probably the sampling and the mixing and the genre overlay. I mean, I knew people who were heavily into pop music, and I mean, you got to consider the pop music when I was much younger was stuff like Steps and that other one, S Club 7, and there was a lot of that going around. And then the next week, you'd hear people on about Limp Bizkit, and that was crazy. And it's because it was this blend of rap and metal. And the rap they enjoyed because they heard bits of it within their pop music. I mean, Eminem was huge at the time. Still is huge. Don't know why I'm saying huge at the time. And people really kind of grasped into that and like, oh yeah, well this is different. It's not the doom of older metal, which had a very dark theme, and especially a lot of people didn't get into older metal because it was quite thematic and they found that quite silly. I mean, if you think of old Iron Maiden, whilst the songs are good, the videos are a bit to be desired, and that put a lot of people off. They kind of looked at it and went, I don't know, it's all demons and Satan and weird mythological creatures. It's a bit D&D for my liking, and I don't think I can get on board with that. And then obviously Limp Bizkit comes around and just says, yeah, break stuff. I know I'm missing huge gaps here, and there's probably people who are really heavily into music are spinning in their chairs or their graves at what I've been saying. But yeah, music makes you feel old. It makes you feel young. It can really tap into your brain and help you out. I mean, the last few months I've listened probably to more music than I have in maybe the last few years. For support, but at the same time, it really exposes something within you, and talking to other people about music exposes something within you because they instantly know what kind of person you are from where your music's coming from. Not entirely, but there's a lot of clues of where you've come from and how you got into it, and I always find it interesting. Even if I don't agree with music taste, I always find it interesting to hear what people listen to. But yeah, I'd suggest checking out Nu Metal if you haven't already. If you're unaware of Nu Metal, if you are aware of Nu Metal, then clearly you know what I'm talking about, and you know that we need to get on with having a Nu Metal revival. Just putting that out there. I realise that it may not be the most popular opinion. I mean, Deftones just had a new album come out. I say just, probably happened months ago. I'm so bad. I don't follow music. This is the other thing as well. This is which pushes me inside. I don't follow music. I don't go out of my way to find bands, and recently I have, which is unusual behaviour for me. And this is the whole thing. Some people really follow bands. There's no band. I think there's maybe two bands from my youth who I wait to find out when their album's coming out. Everyone else, I'll pick it up as I go along. You know, it'll get posted in my suggesteds on YouTube because that's all YouTube is nowadays. It'll be advertised to me. I'm sure the adverts will find me. They always do. Hunt you down. And brand you with their branding. Before we get too conspiracy theory based, I'd love to know what you're into. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Only a short one today, because I'm still on the hunt for new music, which gives me that I don't know, which really taps into. I don't even know what makes nu metal now. It's like heavy beats with a lot of bass. I think it's the vocals. The vocals do it as well. I just don't understand that metalcore, and I feel old. I've always felt old, but now music is making me feel old. Maybe I should just fit myself for a flat cap and a stout and go yell at the kids. I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for listening. Talk to you guys later.